I think that's really the path of innovation.
Yeah.
AOL went from nothing to the leader, and then in the first wave was the dominant company, and the second wave lost some altitude, and new innovators kind of taking a fresh look kind of rose. I think in the third wave you'll see that same dynamic. Some of the companies that are leaders now will get to new heights, and others will fall by the wayside to be replaced by a new generation of entrepreneurs, bringing a new perspective around some of these opportunities.
Let's talk about what the third wave is, because that's really what the book's about. I mean, for me, I'm geeking out just even having you here to talk about this movie of my life. To watch you do this for 20 years is really we all took notes watching you guys. But what is the third wave? How do you define it, and why is it important?
I think it's amazing to see the progress that we've made in the first wave and the second wave, and how it's changed communications and media and in so many aspects of our lives. But really important aspects of our lives haven't changed that much.
Which ones?
Take healthcare, for example. The way it works for most people when they go to their doctor or go to the hospital is the same way it worked 10 years ago. When their kids go to school, the way they're learning in school is about the same way. Teachers are teaching generally the same way. Students are learning generally the same way. And there's opportunities now to take the internet to the next level and really integrate it in these real world kind of ways. So that healthcare should be more technology-based. When people are diagnosed with cancer, for example, MD Anderson says 25% of the time they reversed the first opinion. They were wrong. The data wasn't right. There's smarter ways to manage diseases like diabetes and or conditions like diabetes. In schools, there's much smarter ways to have more personalized, adaptive approaches to learning that some schools are doing, but most aren't. And it's true in energy. It's true in transportation. Things like smart cities and driverless cars. They're starting to capture people's imagination. But these things will only work if the innovators realize it's not just about the software. It's not just about the app. It's how you take this software, take this technology, take this connectivity, and integrate it in everyday life, which will require partnering with some of the players, schools or hospitals, for example, and also require understanding the policy implications, because these sectors are regulated.
Right.
And that scares people. Oh, the government, it's going to slow things down, and there's some truth to that. But the reality is things like drug safety, things like food safety, things like drones flying in the sky or driverless cars driving on our streets, there's going to be some regulations associated. So the innovators in this third wave need to recognize the importance of partnerships. They need to recognize the importance of policy, and they also need to recognize that these are hard problems. These revolutions will happen in more evolutionary ways, so they're going to have more perseverance. Like in the book, I call these the 3 Ps: partnership, policy, and perseverance are going to define the third wave. And they were really important in the first wave, not so important in the second wave, but going to be important again in the third wave.
Hey everybody, I want to talk about one of my favorite addictions, Audible. I listen to audiobooks constantly because I love nonfiction, I love learning, and I'm big into bios. So my Audible pick for this month, this week, whatever amount of time it's going to take you to listen to it, I think you can listen to it in about a week, is The Man Who Knew Infinity, A Life of the Genius Ramanujan. And this book is amazing. It is about an Indian clerk who is a math genius and who filled 3 or 4 books with math theories and formulas that today inform how we interpret black holes, and a true genius who then went to England to study. And it is being made into a film, which I was lucky enough to just see. And it's got Jeremy Irons and Dave Patel in it. It is an amazing, and Stephen Fry, and just an all-star cast. And I just saw this movie, and it is very powerful and a great, great film. And, making math, interesting, very hard to do. And there's a lot of these people who did seminal, incredible work, and you would never know them. The book is by Robert Kangle, and I actually saw the author speak with the director recently at a screening. And I, immediately when I got invited to the screening, I said to myself, I'm going to go to a screening for this book, but I want to go deeper. I always want to know not just the 90-minute or 120-minute version, but I like to read the original source material, and I like to listen to it. I'm constantly in the car. I'm driving between things. Sometimes I got to take my daughter to a kid's party, and then there's other parents there. I don't want to talk to them, so I pretend I'm on a conference call. Really, I'm listening to an Audible book while the kids are playing. The kids don't want to be involved with the parents, but the parents don't want to talk to me about some crazy nonsense, I just say, I got to go make a phone call. I secretly listen to a little bit of Audible. So go check out The Man Who Knew Infinity. It is an amazing audiobook, and it is going to get my highest recommendation. Of course, if you're not into bios, there are a ton of other interesting books. One I'm reading on my hikes through the NorCal mountains is Amusing Ourselves to Death by Neil Postman, who is I believe a New York University media kind of Marshall McLuhan type professor. And Amusing Ourselves to Death is my backup here. If you want to listen to an amazing book from 1985 about media and media theory and television versus the printed word in newspapers and before that books, and how illiterate and how television has become a huge nonsensical mess. We are actually amusing ourselves to death. If you look at what's happening in this election this year, this is a really interesting book to go back and listen to, especially. And the way I wound up wanting to listening to Amusing Ourselves to Death was I had Keith Raboy at the Launch Festival. You may have heard that episode here. And he just mentioned casually, like when I was asking about Donald Trump and Cruz and Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, he said, it reminds me of this incredible book, Amusing Ourselves to Death. And I was like, oh yeah, I didn't read that. And this is one of the things I love about audiobooks is, sometimes you get older, you're 30 years old, you're 40 years old, you're 50 years old. You're supposed to have read some books. You're supposed to be an expert. Listen, I'm supposed to be an expert on media and technology. I never read Amusing Ourselves to Death. I may have read a chapter or two when I was younger on the book. And now I have Audible. I listen to it on my hikes. I go for a 2-hour hike. I knock out 2 out of the 7 hours. Boom, I got another hike, wipe out another 2 or 3 hours, go to the gym. I reward myself when I exercise with Audible. I reward myself when I'm driving with Audible. I like to make myself smarter. Thank you so much to our friends at Audible for supporting this episode. Get a free audiobook right now, like The Man Who Knew Infinity or Amusing Ourselves to Death. And you can just go to audible.com/twist, audible.com/twist. Some of my past recommendations, The Hobbit, read by Robert Inglis, is amazing. My daughter and I love listening to that. We've listened to the first 3 chapters over and over again because she likes certain scenes, like when the dwarfs are singing and breaking plates. And then before that, I did Building Great Sentences because you guys know I sold my book and it will be on Audible at some point next year. And I wanted to write better sentences, so I got this Building Great Sentences, and it's really helped me do better sentences in my writing. And you can access your stuff from iPhones, iPad, Android, Windows, all that. What's really interesting is I have an iPad, I have my phone, and a lot of times I'll go from my iPad to my phone and it remembers where I was. So if you forget and my phone died on the hike, then I plugged in my iPad and I was listening on my deck, it remembered where I was and it caught me up when I was listening to Amusing Ourselves to Death. 180,000 titles in every genre, and they're doing some really interesting stuff with channels and podcasting. There's a bunch of stuff going on with Audible that you'll read about in the news. They're just an amazing company. I love it. Download my book of the week for free by signing up at audible.com/twist. You can only get that free book by going to audible.com/TWIST, and they love to see you do that. So make sure you tell your mom, your dad, your cousin, your brother, your sons, your daughters, your friends, your enemies. Tell them to go to audible.com/twist and get a free book. The Man Who Knew Infinity, a great, great listen. And Amusing Ourselves to Death, another great listen. Okay, let's get back to this amazing interview.